Mike, great to have you with us today at GLG. I'm sure we're going to have a fascinating discussion.
I look forward to it.
You have participated at various levels in some of the most historic military operations in U.S. history and modern U.S. history, the bin Laden raid specifically. Can you talk a little bit more about what your role was in that process?
One, it was working with the raid force to develop the capabilities, and then two, all the policy decisions that had to be made at the White House, whether we would involve the Pakistanis or not in the operation, how the raid would actually be conducted, the size of the force, and various tactical things. We had very good intelligence that bin Laden was there, and it turns out we knew the identity of every person in that house and where they were, but it was still a circumstantial case. There was no definitive proof that he was there. There was just a lot of evidence that he was, and so it was, a throat-gulping moment to bring all that together.
So traditionally, intelligence officials are known to develop the options. They don't necessarily make a recommendation of which option to choose. It sounds like in this process, though, you were making a recommendation as well.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think I contributed is because I had an operational background in both all aspects of intelligence, but also special operations. I could understand all the details and help convince my other senior policy colleagues about here's why this will work, here's why this won't work. Or this is a better bet.
When you're making a recommendation to the president about what to do, were there times that you thought to yourself, wow, this is just totally off base, we need to go in a different direction? I mean, how do you actually gain conviction around the recommendation that you're making on an issue of that consequence?
You examine all options, and so some things that have some merits, a big airstrike, for example, but might result in women and children getting killed or innocents getting killed, you then reject it for a variety of reasons. And then something that has other attractive features, like the raid that we did, you have to just work it through every step of the way to see that you have a good chance of succeeding and then work out the problems. And so your confidence builds as you refine an option, but it's never 100%.
Could you just help us understand the difference between an airstrike versus a raid and the other options that were on the table? How did you make that decision?
So there were various forms of raids considered, with Pakistanis, without, and methods of infiltration, and there were big airstrikes and little airstrikes. And so the first path we went down was really a big airstrike that would have involved 64,000 pounds of explosives on this house. It had the merits of we had high confidence we could drop the bombs where we wanted to. The problem with it was twofold. One, innocents would be killed in the strike. And then also, we wouldn't have certainty that we got bin Laden. Even if we did, it would be an airstrike that occurred in a city in Pakistan. So the Pakistanis would be upset by it. Al-Qaeda would lie about it. And so unless you had definitive intelligence after, you might have uncertainty and you would suffer the foreign policy consequences of why did you do the strike on this area and did you get them and could you prove it, and et cetera. And so those two factors, the so-called collateral damage and the uncertainty, really then drove us to the raid camp, and then it was a question of what kind of raid. The president and Secretary Gates and others were initially in favor of an airstrike and then moved more to consider raid options with a smaller airstrike, a less destructive airstrike. And that played out over essentially 3 weeks as the raid plan evolved, and then it looked better than the airstrike. And then a critical factor in doing the raid was confidence that we could do it, but also that if we did get him, we would know it. This is the one sure way we would have DNA proof that if everything went well, and that's how it turned out, and the president was able to go on TV and explain it to the nation. And so it was a bit of a higher risk operation militarily, but you had greater strategic certainty if everything went well.